if my role in this world is to be a guide or a mentor or somebody that has the capacity to offer some semblance of guidance, if I'm not in the trenches, it's, you know, there's not much I'm going to have to say, And so I think part of what life has always done, I was going to say to me, but really for me, is it keeps me pretty consistently in that space where I'm compromised in some way. And right now, for the last 5 years, that compromise has been like ridiculous amounts of sleep deprivation, which is incredibly challenging on so many levels. But it's teaching me about what it means to be an elder at the same time. It's like, it's ridiculously efficient. The discomfort, limitation, this place of being compromised is ridiculously efficient at getting me in touch with the deepest expressions of the self. If I'm working with them, if I resist against them, it's pure and utter misery. If I let myself surrender within that space, it's revelation. And that's really the art of life, I think, is that the outside world isn't ever going to change. It's going to do its thing. It's a wave that's way bigger than us, that's been moving in its own direction for 14 billion years. If the audacity to think that it should bend to meet our preference system is utterly ridiculous. It's going to do its own thing. Our role within that is to participate, but to participate in a way that isn't trying to mold it to fit the lowest expressions of us. Like, to fit our wants, cravings, and desires is utterly pointless and a complete waste of time. There's a much better way of being in the world, in a liberated sense, that when there's less and less of you that needs the world to be a certain way, to be comfortable on the inside, this availability to a part of you that's capable of engaging life from the deepest, most beautiful expressions of the self, that's allowed to step into the forefront of your movement through the world. And beauty is created by that, by those expressions of the self, because they're unafraid of losing something, because they're not identified in the defense system. And when your attention isn't focused on running towards something that you don't have, or pushing away something that you don't want, trying to get the things you want, avoid the things you don't want, when you're not doing that, there's so much bandwidth to do something else. And the parts of you that are capable of stepping in those spaces are capable of creating a tremendous beauty and lifting the world up, lifting others up, lifting whatever situation you're in up. And I think that's what I want my version of mastery to look like. I want my version of mastery to be such a cultivated form of intimacy with those parts of myself that they take over entirely, right? That I walk through life in that space, in that part of me that is purely invested in service, because it wants and needs nothing for itself. It doesn't mean you don't still have to feed your body and take care of yourself, and but the parts that are driving you, the parts that are motivating you, the parts that are fueling your action in the world come from that part of you that is far less interested in the dance of the ego, and recognizes the utter futility in that it never gets what it wants, right? Not for very long. And so why waste time in that dance? And isn't there a better way to be spending our time? And when we recognize that the ego is never going to be able to steer our ship toward the shores of liberation or revelation, we we walk the plank, right? The soul was like, I'm jumping in. I'd rather be buoyant in these waters where the sharks live, than on this boat heading away from life. You know, I'm going to surrender in the ocean and let the currents of life carry me and move me. And in that space, I'm going to offer it the fullness of my being, the fullness of my attention, the fullness of who I am. And that recipe creates magic in the world. It creates beauty in the world. It liberates yourself and it liberates other people. It shows us what I think we're really all doing here, which is to remember our eternal nature, right? And to remember that by forgetting it. You know, like we come in forgetting it, and then if we have courage and we can let ourselves go, we have the capacity to find it. And you find it through death, you know, 1,000 deaths, you know, I die daily, the mystics used to say, you know. And it's the only dance in town, so we might as well, like, you know, start learning the steps, you know.